AI tools like Cursor are really good at helping you build out your applications, and it's pretty obvious now that vibe coding is here to stay. And although I was one of the first people to say, yeah, it's not a good idea, it sounds like a fad, that's just not the case. The tools are really good now at building a significant portion of your app. So if you're building your project out right now, you're probably evaluating whether or not you should switch to this vibe coding workflow. The biggest problem with vibe coding is what I call the vibe coding rabbit hole, right? It's where you're initially excited by the results you're seeing and it's not going terrible. Maybe there's a couple things you have to fix here and there, but overall you can make progress this way. And as you start to build more and more of the project, more and more of the app, it becomes this like dopamine driven event where you feel like you're basically playing slots. Every time you throw a prompt its way, hey, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't work, I just start over and continue going. But what's often happening to folks is you start to get deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole where at some point the project itself just falls over, it completely breaks. Now, on social media, you're going to see everyone say, oh my goodness, I built this in 1 hour. What you don't see is the days of debugging that need to happen afterwards. So it's a lot of like toy examples being built, a lot of to-do apps and note-taking apps, which is fine, nothing against that, but it's not really showing you the reality of vibe coding. Overall, this is mostly for me to remind myself like there's a balance to this. So what is the balance? Because no one's going back to coding by hand. At this point, coding by hand is like using punch cards. So we want to take advantage of the new AI vibe coding tools. And what I found is there are like some key ideas, principles, tips, strategies, tactics, whatever you want to call it, that apply almost directly to vibe coding and apply to like classical engineering, software engineering development, web development. And so in this video, I wanted to walk through what those key ideas are. I'm going to refresh them for the new age of vibe coding and not tell you to go read Uncle Bob's book on solid development principles, but you should. And let's get into these ideas around improving your ability to vibe code at a higher level rather than constantly falling into this rabbit hole where you sometimes can't get out of it and you kind of have to trash your entire project, which sucks. The first principle I like to think through is like this agentic loop. And the idea here is you want the agent to run as long as possible without you intervening on its behalf or trying to guide it to do something. So how do you create that? The classic way to do that, and if you've read some theory around this, is to have the agent or the code verify itself. And there's a couple ways to do this. The classical way is to have linting in place, static type checking, and then also having test. And with the agents in Cursor right now, what they can do is, if you set this up correctly, it can start to run, and when it gets to a point, it'll say, let me look at the environment here and see if there's any tests available, and I'll try to run those tests to see if the code I've written is correct. And I've seen this happen multiple times where it'll run the test, it'll fail the test, read the reason why it failed the test, and then continue to work to get that test to pass. Now, how lazy it is at passing that test and how correct it passed and the correction that it makes depends on the model, depends on your prompting. But overall, it can spin into this loop where it starts to actually write more reliable code versus it just works. And then the agent asks you, hey, if you click this button, did something happen? And you're like, yeah, something happened. And you're like, all right, great. Let's move on to the next thing. And it moves on to the next thing to break more stuff. So this agentic loop, this little principle here is probably something you've encountered before. If you've used Python or any like REPL type development environment, it's the same thing where you write some code, you execute it, see if there's an error or not, and then you make a correction. So we just want the agent to be able to do that on its own. And once it can get into this agentic loop, it also improves the quality of your code base over time instead of constantly producing slop or regressing in terms of functionality inside of your code base. You just need to guide the quality of the code that's being written. And the idea here is get technical. If you're technical enough to talk with the agent as a staff engineer, maybe you're a junior level program, whatever it is, get technical with the agent. And so include the specific technologies that you're working with, whether that being cursor rules or the prompts. The more specific about the technology that you're using, the easier it is for the agent to make a choice about what to do next. Remember, it's just making next token predictions. And so if you give it a little bit of a hint on where to go, it'll just make the correct prediction on where to go. So if I say, hey, I'm doing something in Next.js right now, it'll know, okay, my context should be, I'm working in Next.js, let me write some JavaScript or TypeScript code versus let me try to write something in Python, which wouldn't work in Next.js. And also, I found that if you want to specify some coding principles, it will cosplay as if it is like this really good engineer. And I mentioned you don't have to read Uncle Bob's books, but if you can throw in some keywords like, hey, use solid principles, use enterprise integration patterns, do this in OOP, or write modular components, do service-based architecture, just saying those words to the agent will make it start to code that way. And it's really interesting to see a difference in quality when you just start to nudge it in that direction. It starts separating files out, it starts writing more smaller functions, things are easier to debug, and overall the quality of the code base goes up. And when the quality of the code base is higher, in that agentic loop I mentioned before, it's easier for it to debug itself and fix things. That's just what I've seen overall. Quick advanced level tip here, because we have such an influx of people coming into the idea of coding and vibe coding and building apps, the idea of Git is foreign to folks. So if you've been doing any type of development for years, Git is something you take almost for granted because it's like a given, like you would just start with Git, right? The idea here is you want to iterate and review with Git, specifically GitHub, but Git's the technology. And what that means is the iteration and review process, take it just like an enterprise would do, right? Someone opens a PR up, someone else does a peer review, and then we accept the changes into the code base. Because when a problem is solved in coding or in application development, that doesn't mean that's the best solution or the optimal solution. There are 3 levels of solutions when it comes to coding. And the first one is the brute force solution. So that's when the slow method, however it just gets done, doesn't matter how it works, as long as we see the outcome we want. For example, let's say we want to build a website. The brute force way to do a website these days would be to write the raw HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you start to build a really complex website, it doesn't scale well because you have to write so much code. And in that instance, you want to switch over to maybe a framework, especially if front-end development is not your bag. The next step up is like suboptimal solutions. And these are where, okay, we're going to improve some things. We're not going to go all the way to perfect this code, but we want to handle some of the edge cases, make sure it's maintainable. If we continue to try to handle every single edge case, it's just going to take too long to implement and take too long to solution. And so we're going to go for like the suboptimal approach, but it's quote unquote good enough. And then the third kind of solution is the optimal solution, which is, hey, this handles all the edge cases. It works perfectly. It works fast. It's the best possible runtime. And this is the one we would want. But the constraint is either we don't have enough time to do it, or, it's going to cost too much, or it's compute intensive, something like that. And what I found with these models is that, or any AI coding tool, especially with Cursor, it will go for the brute force solution almost 90% of the time. It'll just throw that in there. And if you're not looking or you're not careful with how it's solutioning things, you'll end up with a lot of brute force solutions in your code. And of course, as those brute force solutions stack on top of each other, it becomes unworkable. That's where you run into that rabbit hole or that doom loop that happens where nothing you do is fixing the app. It's because you've stacked so many brute force solutions on top of each other. And the only way I found to combat this is by reviewing the code it writes iteratively. So I will create a branch or checkout or a PR or something like that, and then work through a small problem and review the code as it's written, and then merge that back into my code base. This way, I can catch when it's trying to do the easy way out. Another perfect example of this is when you ask it to solve a problem and it needs to solve some tests to solve the problem. What I've seen is that the agent will actually just comment out the test and be like, hey, I passed the test, whatever. It'll just put in I passed. And that is what I'm talking about here. Without reviewing the code on the surface level, you can see all the tests passed. But if you look at the code, you'll see it just commented it out. It'll put in like a little comment and say, oh, I just removed this test so I can move on to the next problem on the task list or whatever it is. So this is actually a pretty big one. Get comfortable with just reviewing the code and merging it in instead of just constantly stacking brute force solutions. Be specific in your prompts. And I put this as an advanced level tip because I don't do this sometimes. Sometimes I'll just be like, just do the random thing, do it right, do it correct, whatever it is. The trivial version of this would be build a website. Of course, there's 18 million ways to build a website. It's all over the internet. There's a bunch of tutorials. When you say build a website, the agent's looking into its data, which is basically the web, and it's saying, I have all these options. I'm going to go for the, again, brute force basic version of this. And that might not be what you want. If you do want to build a website using a framework like Next.js, just tell it that. Instead of hoping that it picks Next.js, it might pick a random library to do your website in, or it might not use a library. And the more specific you are in your prompts, the better you can guide the agent overall. So just provide the details. Don't try to skimp on the details unless you really just don't have the technical knowledge to give details. And even in that case, I would say, hey, push back and tell me what do you need in terms of specifics to implement this versus just going with whatever prompt you have at the beginning. And this kind of leads into the next point here, which is don't start with a blank slate. And the blank slate problem is when if you give the agent so much room to operate, it's likely to make more mistakes. If you constrain the environment it's working in, it's likely to make less mistakes. And so starter templates are great. There's so many starter templates online. There's no excuse at this point to not use a starter template. If you go into some of the other tools like Bolt, Lovable, you'll see like they all have the same starter template. And if you're non-technical, you probably don't even notice this or care. But they all start with this Vite basic static site type generator thing. And so that's why they all have the same constraints. With Cursor, you get a blank slate, but also that's the problem, right? And if you're using it for web development, you're better off starting with some type of template that's already pre-configured with things like auth, billing. You get your Stripe in there, get your clerk in there, get all these little integrations out of the way, then start coding, because it'll be really difficult for you to prompt engineer your way through all of that boilerplate. It's just not a fun time to do all that. That's why the other tools are way better at getting started. But with Cursor, there's that curve because there's no like template for Cursor. It's just saying, hey, you should probably know how to do this, so go ahead and do it. And if you do, then that's fine. But overall, even for me, when I start a new project, I have a template that I just pull down and then I start the project. We're actually in the template right now, and you can see that I have a lot handled already. I have auth, credits, email, payments, how I do secrets, and how I do deployments, all documented and nailed down. So any project I start, I can just use this as a launching pad before I even do my first prompt. And it's just a lot easier to work with. I know exactly what to make updates to. Overall, don't start with a blank slate, start with a template. Including in that template is documentation, just like I showed you. If you have documentation around how to use that template, it's not only for you or your teammates, it's good for the AI agents as well, because they don't have to guess at how to use the template. And this works super well compared to just giving it code, give it some context, throw a couple of markdown files in there, and that works out really well. The next point here is to make surgical edits. Now, you can probably see a theme, right? Be specific, get down to the details, don't leave much room up for interpretation, avoid the agent having to guess at things. And when I say surgical, think about the concept of a surgeon going in and doing surgery, right? The tools that they're using are very tiny and used specifically not to cause a lot of harm to the rest of the body. Imagine if a surgeon had to work with a hammer, a drill, scissors that you cut the lawn with. It wouldn't make any sense. So some of you who are going into these code bases, or when you're working on a project, you can find yourself using a very blunt way of making edits. It doesn't really make sense, right? If you're 3 days into a project, you shouldn't just tell Cursor, hey, add a new feature for this and give it no direction on what to do. It's just going to delete a lot of code. It's going to make a lot of assumptions. It's going to break the existing work you have in place. So here I have 3 little rules. Is identify the specific files you want to edit. This is when your code base is large. Describe the precise changes. If you know exactly what needs to be changed, reviewed, or modified, at this point, it's just saving you time from typing. That's what you want to do, right? If it's going to take 15 file changes, specify, hey, change all these files, but make these simple edits here, make this simple edit in this file, make that edit in this file. That can be much faster. And then orient the model. Tell it what direction and steps to take at a high level. If you know that you need to update your API first before you update the front end, then just say that. Tell the agent, hey, update my API first, then proceed to do the front end. If you have a task list of things that it needs to do, even better. When you give the agent that set of task lists, it can do one by one and go ahead and make those edits. Again, don't make the agent think through this. Just let it do the typing for you. Here is the most advanced level tip here for you if you're a vibe coder, and it's really to just understand the code base. There's no substitution for this level here. It just takes your vibe coding sessions up a notch, because when you don't understand the code base, you don't understand what's going on. You don't understand why this error is happening. Unless it's a simple project that's a simple front end, you can probably get away with that, right? I find myself sometimes I have no idea what's happening on the front end. I'm just like going with it, and maybe it's a suboptimal performance. I cannot get away with that same approach on the back end. And I think over time, it really just is the agents haven't seen as much back end code on the web because most of it's behind company firewalls, right? And so that's the reason why agents aren't as good at the back end as they are at the front end. There's so much front end code online. There's so many examples, so many tutorials. So when it comes to the back end, and when you're thinking about the entire project, you need both those sides. And so you need to understand the code base, the reason why things were built the way it was. And once you have that understanding, you can do all of the above steps a lot easier. All the above steps build on top of you understanding what's going on in the code base. Now, of course, vibe coding, you can get away with not understanding the code base, but I think you're going to get better results if you do understand the code base. And that's something I don't think anyone would argue with. But understanding the code base is difficult if it's super large and you don't have the ability to go in and inspect everything in terms of like your time. So that's where you can chat with the code base, use Cursor to do a quick chat. Hey, explain this to me. How does this portion work? And I find myself doing that all the time. So take a moment, explore it, understand it, and it'll make everything else a lot smoother. So those are a couple of tips for you if you're like a vibe coder and you're like me and you are now entering the world of vibe coding, but you've been coding for a while. All of this is common sense approaches, but I think because of this dopamine hit you get when you try to do a prompt and it works, you're like, whoa, that's crazy. And so you can fall into this habit of trying to do that over and over again. But taking a step back, falling back to some of these principles here really just helps you get done with a project, right? Everyone can get started. Not many people are finishing. And I think that is the goal when you're actually vibe coding these apps. So I'll see you in the next one.